Hello, hello. Welcome back to Adobe Live. This is your third and final crash course of the week. Welcome. This has been a fun week, and in terms of the consistency, I'm now back in the same hotel room that I was yesterday. So it's not 3 for 3 as we once thought it could have been. We're in Osaka, and welcome if you're watching live. You can come and join us on Behance. We've got the chat there, we've got the community. Feel free to jump in and ask some questions as we go. We're going to be going through InDesign and some paragraph styles and other things today. Speaking of which, I'm just going to double check that we've got Behance active and everything's all good. So welcome, hello, we can see a few people in there. Michelle, Tim, Oliver, Gareth, hello. If you're joining in, then let us know where you're watching from. I've just enabled some background music, by the way. Hopefully we've got the levels all good. I had to cut it yesterday because it just wasn't quite right. Let's jump to it. Okay, so let's go to InDesign and let's see. All right. So hopefully you can see my screen here on InDesign. I'm going to make sure that what is visible on the screen comes through on the stream because I'm using a slightly different aspect ratio to what goes out live. So I'm just going to make sure that everything from below about this mark is always going to be visible for you. So paragraph styles, that's what we're going to be going through today. All about consistency and efficiency. We're seeing a running theme here on how we can use applications to make our future self thank our past self and get things easy to go. So let's say, for example, we've got this InDesign document here, and I've set this up as a 30 by 40 centimeter, I believe anyway. Let me just double check. Document setup. So yeah, 300mm by 400mm. One of my favorite aspect ratios for a print document. And we've got a margin of 15mm, a 3mm bleed, and we can just see any changes that I want to make here would happen. But I'm happy with this setup. And I've gone for 12 columns. I do this quite frequently whenever I'm doing design work. 12 is just great because it's divisible by 3, 4, 1, 2, 6, and of course 12. All sorts of different options for layout and other things. So, paragraph styles, what are they? Well, let's give a bit of a demonstration. Let's say I'm working on this document here, and I know that I'm going to have a heading, and let's just make this one a little bit larger so we can see it. So I know I'm going to have a heading, and I know that I'm going to have a subtitle. And let's make this, I don't know, let's go for 60 point. And I know that I'm going to have some body copy text. And let's just fill with placeholder. And let's set this to, I don't know, something like 20. And actually, let's go. It's still quite large, isn't it? Let's go fill some more placeholder text. Okay, so let's say we're working with a variety of text options on a page, and it could just be, as simple as this. We've got 3 different things happening, and then we go and add another page. And on our second page, we're working with our layout, and we draw another text box, and this page also has a heading, and we're just going to position that. And this page is also going to have some body copy, and let's fill with placeholder text. And we come to design and we work out and we're like, what was our heading size again? It was like, was it 100 point? And then our body copy, you think, I think I made that 16 in the end. Let's make this 16. And so as you start designing your document and working through things, very quickly, everything becomes inconsistent, because if we go back to our original first page, we realize that no, it wasn't 100 point, it was 120 point. And our body copy, yes, was 16 point. But if I happen to change my design, let's say I actually want my heading to be larger, it only updates it in the same place, in a single spot. So that's a little bit of an issue. And what we actually want are style sheets that will be consistent across your whole document, across all of your pages, in all sorts of varying forms. So that's where paragraph styles come in. And so this is going to be a bit of a basic introduction, that's the nature of these crash courses, into how you can get started with different tools and features. And I'm going to focus on paragraph styles, and I'm hoping that I can also jump into character styles and possibly even some object styles as well, because they're kind of similar and they are a little bit intertwined. So in order to make sure we got this available, we want to go to Window, go to Styles, and then just enable paragraph styles. Now I've actually got this window open here, and I'm actually just going to delete that one. So when you have it by standard, you have just your basic paragraph. So this is every time you add a new piece of text onto your document, this is what's going to happen. So if we double click into here, and you notice I double clicked into the blue area, not the actual text. Double clicking into the blue area just opens up the style options. Double clicking into the text is how you rename the text. So we see in our basic character formats, we've got some font families, font styles, sizing, and other things already preset. So that means that every brand new text box that's on your document is going to have these settings applied. So we can set a basic setup for our document. And I could go through and I could browse through. Let's say, for example, we want to change our basic text to Georgia. If I hit preview, you'll see that all of that text updated because I've told InDesign that I want my whole document to be Georgia as a base with no styling or anything else. So if we want some specificity, which is one of my favorite words, by the way, we can create a brand new paragraph style. So let me just readjust this, kind of in the way a little bit. So let me just create a brand new paragraph style. So with the plus icon, we can create a new style. And from here, you notice if I click into the name, I can rename it. So I'm actually just going to call this one heading. Hit return, and that saves the name. If we double click into the blue area, we now come into our paragraph style options. So within our paragraph style options, I've got all sorts of things here. I've got basic character formats, advanced character formats, indents and spacing, rulers, hyphenation, justification, you name it. Anything about your text in terms of a body of text is going to be here. So let's start off with some basic character formats. And I could go through and I could just choose a particular style that I want to work with. So I could look through, let's say, Lust, for example. That's a great font family. And let's choose a sizing. And let's make this one 120. Hit OK. Now, of course, that's done nothing because we didn't actually apply that paragraph style to anything in our document. So if we click onto a piece of text, and we can either click onto the text box itself, which is what we move around the page, or we can double click into the text and we can select an area of the browser, an area of the text, the paragraph within this, and we can just apply heading. And you see that it's now applied all of those settings that I just enabled. So if I click onto another one, I can also apply heading over there. And so these paragraph styles are now being implemented and adjusted in multiple places. And if I go onto my second page and also apply heading, and let me just resize here. Now if I change anything within this paragraph style, let's say we actually want this to be 100 point size. When I go back up to my first page, that area has also been updated to 100 point. Okay. I'm not sure why the music keeps stopping. Interesting. All right. We got it back up again. So that is your very first look at what a paragraph style is doing. But now let's actually work with it and design some things. So there's a few different paragraph styles that I may want to do here. And I've got some text that I already want to work with, just saved over into my pasteboard here. And I've also got some images from my current trip or recent trip in Japan. So these are all images from the Tokyo area that I just happen to have exported out in my export bin. If you caught the stream on Tuesday, it was all about my efficient workflows in Lightroom. All of these images were immediately available in my export bin because of that process and workflow. So I'd recommend going and checking out that stream if you want to. It will be available over on the Adobe UK channel or on the Behance scheduler. So I've got these images that I want to work with, and I've got some text that I want to work with. Let's just delete these for now. And let's start to bring in some text and some images together. I'm going to start with this image. I think this is kind of a cool image. This is from, where is this from? I think it's on Cat Street in Tokyo, in Shibuya. And let's just enlarge this image across. And I've got some rulers here set to the halfway point. And you know what? I'm pretty happy to make this fit exactly to the halfway. So we can have a half and half image. So that's pretty cool. We can drop that in there. And let's now bring in our heading. So this is just a basic text. Just a text box with our text applied. And I can click into here, heading, boom. There's our new heading design that we want to work with. And actually, let me show you a second aspect to this. So you don't necessarily have to have just one paragraph style in a text box. Your paragraph styles apply to the paragraph in general. So if I hit return and type a new paragraph, and we create this just back to our basic paragraph, you'll notice that that only applies to that new text that I've put. The first paragraph, my Tokyo text, has my other paragraph style applied to it. So new paragraph only takes on whatever paragraph style you have. And I can click anywhere within this text or within the line itself and apply a paragraph style. I don't need to highlight the whole text or anything because it's going to apply it to the start and end point of that paragraph. So where you last press return to where you next press return, that complete body of text is going to have that paragraph style. So we've got this second line here, and I actually have some text that I wanted to add here, which is like anywhere else, but wildly different, which is how I describe Tokyo, or rather how I describe Japan in general. It's a destination that has everything you'd expect from a wealthy, developed country. You know, you've got mass transport, you've got big urban areas, you've got offices, housing, all sorts of things. And yet everything is wildly different. So it's everything you've come to know and expect from life, but different. And Japan, I feel more so than anywhere else I've been. Okay, so I've just created a new paragraph style, subtitle. I'm just going to drag to rearrange it below my heading. And I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that. Okay, so I've got my subtitle here. I've dragged it below my heading. And if we double click into here, now that we're working with a second paragraph style, we can start to work on them in combination with each other. So in our general tab over here, I can base this new paragraph style on an existing paragraph style that I've got created. So I could base it on my heading. And you see that with the preview enabled, that has just applied the attributes of my heading in terms of the size and applied it to this new paragraph style. If we go into the basic character formats, I can change and I could create some new typography and other things. So it's bringing in details from the previous one and applying it to your new paragraph style that you're just creating. So let's now choose, I did get some new fonts just recently, and in typical fashion, I forgot the name of it. So let's open our text and let's go to our recently added. So I had, where are we going? New Kansas was a pretty interesting one. And I'm going to change my heading also to New Kansas. Where are we looking? N-E. There's a lot of noto. Why can't I see that? Interesting. Let's just try a good old typing. New Kansas. Boom. Okay. And let's now go back to our subtitle. And you'll see that because I changed this text in my character palette window, we've now got this plus symbol in the paragraph styles. And what that's saying is it's had this style overwritten elsewhere. So yes, we have our paragraph style that we've created, but then I've gone and done a manual change. And so it's recognizing that I may want to keep that manual change, but it's still bringing with it the existing paragraph styles that I'd set previously. So anything else that I'd put within these options. But if we like, we can right click on here and we can either apply these paragraph style and clear the overrides, anything that I've made in the separate panels, or I can redefine the style based on how it's currently looking. So if I redefine the style, the plus disappears, and now any change that I've made here is applicable as that paragraph style. So this is my subtitle, this is my heading, and we can see that they're both in the same text box, which is actually a little bit of a, well, depending on how you look at it, it could be a hindrance or it could be a bonus. At the moment, it's a little bit of a hindrance because we don't have a decent amount of space and legibility happening here. So let's go into our heading, double click into there, and let's jump down into some of these extra controls that you can do in paragraph styles. So we've got indents and spacing here, and I can create some space after my paragraph style. So you see, just with this option here, I can create some space using millimeters, and I can preview how that's looking. And so now at the end of that heading paragraph style, it's going to add 12 millimeters of space. Perfect. Let's see what else we can do in here. We could also add some paragraph rules. So for example, a rule below. We can click to turn that on. We can increase the weight. And this has just added a line underneath our text on the baseline of that text. I could offset that again, just with measurement here, and we could go 12 millimeters. And likewise, I could then increase my space after to even more. So maybe I want to double it to 24 millimeters, or maybe we want to have a rhythm of a ratio of 6. So we go from 12 to 18. They're all divisible by each other. Let's go back to our paragraph rules. I could change this to only the width of the text. I could actually do a negative dimension here, and I could actually put that above the baseline. So let's say I want this below my baseline, 12 millimeters as a paragraph rule. and I want it to be the width of the text. Perfect. We've got some other features in here. So hyphenation. Generally, I'd turn hyphenation off. Not a big fan of it. It's just a bit of a mess. We've got some justification options. So at the moment, our text, if we go into our indents and spacing, is aligned to the left. But if I want to, I could center align it. And if I go into, say, full justify, that's going to fit to the width of the text. Then I can enable some justification settings. Now we'll come back to this in a moment because this is actually going to be more important for our body copy. But there's a few settings in here that I generally go by for most of my design work. We've also got some extra features here such as character color. So if I wanted to add a particular color swatch, I can apply that as well in my heading. For the moment, I'm just going to leave it black and we'll come to that a little bit later. Okay, so we've got our heading set, our subtitle. Let's also make this center, and let's also make this one all caps. So you've got options here on the text input as well. So we could use our paragraph styles to set things to be all caps, all lowercase. Using small caps, you can enable ligatures. You can even just do a standard underline. You could strike through. You can see all the options we've got here, which is great. And let's just add some manual leading, just so that we don't get lost in things. And I'm going to set that 18 so that it matches up with how we've got this paragraph rule happening here. And in fact, I'm just going to change that back to lowercase. I think that just looked a little bit better. Cool. So now this single text box has two paragraph styles. We've got our heading and we've got our subtitle. And in fact, I didn't mean to do that. If you select the whole thing and double click it, it will apply it to all paragraphs within that box. Let's just increase the size on our subtitle. So let's go 18. Yeah, maybe more. Maybe more. Cool. That's good. And you know what? I kind of want this subtitle to be on 2 lines. So I'm just going to drag that down. And I'm going to do a soft return. So if I press Shift and return, it's going to keep it as the same paragraph, but it's just going to create a new line. If I did a hard return, technically, these are now 2 different paragraphs. So if I actually change something, within a paragraph style, if I change it to a different paragraph style, let's say I give one of these a heading paragraph. That's a little bit hard to see. Let me demonstrate this with a new body copy. So we've got 3 paragraph styles to work with. So body, and let's create 12. Okay. So because I've done a soft return, or rather, if I did a hard return, which is where you just press return on the keyboard, and then I change the paragraph style, you'll notice it treats it as if it's 2 paragraphs, which is kind of a problem. Whereas if I did this as a soft return, which is where you press Shift or hold Shift and press return, they're now technically the same paragraph, but it's given a new line. And so if I change my paragraph style, it will apply to everything within that body of text. If you want to preview your soft returns and your hard returns, you go up to InDesign Preferences and Type, I believe, and we want to, where am I looking? Actually, possibly is in the View menu, Extras, and we want to show text threads. No. It's our hidden characters. Where are our hidden characters? If in doubt, show hidden characters. Type, show hidden characters. There we go. Cool. So now we've got this big blue icon telling us that is a hard paragraph end. And here, if we do a soft return, we've got this little line that just signifies a new line. So now anything that we do here is technically the same paragraph. Okay, so I'm going to keep these two as my title and subtitle, and I'm just going to have that as a sort of a connected element. And now I'm going to bring in a new text box, and this one is going to be my body text. Let's just make this a bit larger. And so let's just keep going with this. And let me make this a body paragraph style. And we can see that that doesn't look particularly great. So let's double click into our paragraph style, basic character formats, and let's create something that's a little bit more legible. Let's go for Proxima Nova, and let's set medium size. I'm happy to do 12 actually. Let's do 10. Let's do 10. Okay, and our indents and spacing. This time I'm going to do full justify. So let's zoom in a little bit so you can see. So full justify, our text is going to fit from the very left edge all the way to the right edge of the frame. Stylistically, I think this worked great, especially if you've got something that's quite geometric. And in this case, the image that we're working with is very geometric. It's got very straight and hard lines. So I'm going to kind of balance that with the text and the image together. But it does create some issues. So if I just OK this, I'm going to hit W on my keyboard, and we're now getting a full preview of how this document will look. So first of all, ignore the fact that this is placeholder text, it's just random strings of text. But first of all, you notice we've got all this hyphenation along the edge. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm not a big fan of hyphenation. So let's double click into here. Let's go into hyphenation, and let's disable that. So now we can see it's got rid of all this hyphenation. But because we've got full justification across our text, it's created some weird spacing. And there's a few sort of gaps in here. These are known as rivers. In particular, that's a really bad one there, where you've just got this line of white space that is just following through, and it's really distracting. Some of the words have smaller spaces, and some of the words have bigger spaces. So with our justification settings, we can create our own parameters on how far we'd like InDesign to push that spacing versus how much we want it to kind of cozy them up together and other things. So as this grid sort of looks, don't be intimidated by this. There's a lot of numbers and all sorts of options. We've got control on our word spacing, our letter spacing, and our glyph scaling. Glyphs are just characters. It's just the width of the individual letters or numbers or symbols, collectively known as a glyph. So our word spacing, at the moment, we're saying a minimum 80%. That's how far apart, or rather how close together do we want them to be. Our desired, of course, we want them to be 100% based on how the font was initially designed. And our maximum is how far apart do we want these to ever become. In my mind, I'm happy for the minimum to be fairly low, around 80, but it's the maximum that I have an issue with. So I'm going to change that to 120, and that matches up 20% off from our minimum to our maximum. Likewise, our letter spacing, we could do a maximum, probably maybe 3% or so, and I could even do a negative number. Let's maybe go -2. And our glyph scaling, how small do I want InDesign to sometimes shrink those letters so that it fits in a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, but it's not going to be noticeable. So if we went really small, let's accentuate this, say 60%, you'll see some of these letters end up very, very small. So they've been shrunk in their width. And yet, in comparison to some of these other ones, it looks like it's a different font. You know, it looks like it's a different size. It's just something's not right there. But if we change that to, say, 97%, now some of these characters are being shrunk in their width to 97%. But to the human eye, it's not really noticeable. Now, for some fonts, you may be able to push this to about 94%. But ideally, I tend to stick around the idea of about 96. Things are a little bit more noticeable when they scale larger though. So you can generally scale smaller with a bit more flexibility, but going larger, things do kind of become a little bit more noticeable. So I set mine to 103% as a maximum glyph scaling. And if we just preview this on and off, we can see what it's done in our text area. So I'm pointing at the screen. You can't see where I'm pointing. So this area in particular, this is where we had this river of gaps, like just weird, awkward white space. If we preview it, it just kind of tidies it up and just closes it down nice and comfortably. We can hit OK. You can also preview your, what do they call it? H&J violations, hyphenation and justification violations. I believe that's in our preferences. And maybe advanced type. Is it in advanced type? Is it in guides? Oh. See, these are the types of things that I just enable and then set and forget. H&J violations, where are H&J violations? H and J. Violation. Okay, forget that. When you enable H&J violations, it just comes up with little bits of colored shading to show significant gaps in your text. So immediately when you're in the preview mode, in the design mode, you can see where your major issues are in your text. And it's just a quick way of just browsing through and seeing things. Okay, so we have our body here, and I'm pretty happy with this as a body style. But I'm going to work with this on 2 columns. And let's just fill with more placeholder text. And let's just simulate these being some paragraphs in a few places. So let's put one there. Let's put one there. Oh, we've got some very awkward styling happening here. Now let's go back into our indents and spacing. Let's add some space after the paragraphs. Let's go for 4mm. That's cool. And let's look at our justification. Word spacing. Let's maybe make that a little bit tighter so it never goes too wild. Ooh. Gonna have to be a bit flexible here. In some cases, we actually want to go and change and maybe adjust some of the body copy, because in some cases there is just no escaping. You've got these big white spaces and there's just not much you can do. Of course, if we were working with true text here rather than placeholder text, we'd be able to have some sort of editorial control on what we're doing here. In this case, I can just delete it and move on. Happy with that. So we've got some text that I'm working with. We've got a body. We've got a subtitle on our heading. So now if I wanted to go and create a new layout, let's say we create a new page again. And this time, in fact, we can delete these 2 text boxes. Let's bring in a different image. Maybe this one. And let's make a very large image. And maybe crop off over there. You know what? Let's do it the other way. I think the left side of the image is actually a little bit more pleasing to look at. No, change my mind. Change my mind. Okay. And let's bring in some new text. I'm just going to copy our existing text over. And now I'm going to create this layout, but I'm just going to reposition things and resize it based on our grid. And let's go. Oh, I think I've made my text just a little bit too large. That's fine. We can adjust this down. Let's go. Yeah. Cool. Position this around. Just going to bring my image over just a little bit. All right, so we're working with the same paragraph styles, but of course, our text is not legible. It's a little bit of a problem. So how do we now create something that uses our paragraph styles, but can be individually changed? And that's where character styles come in. So we've got our text here, which has a paragraph style of body applied to it, but we can create a character style. So at the moment, as part of our body style, we've got the black color, which is just our registration set. But if we go into our character style and create a new one, and let's just call this one light text, we can now override specific areas of our paragraph style with individual styles that attribute to our characters. So in my light text, the one thing I want to do is change the character color. I'm just going to change it to paper for now and hit OK. So now when I select my text, I can either select the whole text box here and I can apply a character style, or I can double click and highlight particular words and give it this character style of light text. Now the difference between character styles and paragraph styles is that paragraph styles, we can just click anywhere within that paragraph and we can apply certain elements of our styles. Whereas character styles, we have to make sure we select at least one character. We can't just click between characters because that's not actually selecting anything. So if I apply a character style, such as light text, and I can do that in both cases here, now we've got the two elements, the two styles coming together in unison. So we've got our paragraph styles, which we can update, and that will change on the previous page, as well as our character styles, which override certain elements of our paragraph styles. That is actually a very efficient way of working at times, because sometimes you want to do just little tweaks and you don't necessarily want to do big major tweaks. So I'm actually really enjoying how this text is looking with this image. I think this is quite nice. If ever you get the chance to come to Tokyo, by the way, Okutama is an area I would absolutely recommend to everyone. It's just a beautiful area of nature. Most people wouldn't realize that you're still technically in Tokyo. And it's beautiful, especially in the autumn. This was taken around November time, I believe. So we've got all the colors starting to happen. Yeah, I went there again recently and did a lot of filming rather than photography, but yeah, beautiful place. Okay, let's just add a bit of spacing here. We've got a nice sort of lockup between our text and our paragraph style. Perfect. Now, there's a few other things that we can do with paragraph styles, and that is in the sense of things like bullet lists. Now I'm going to show this specifically because it's something that you kind of need to wrap your head around. Let's say, for example, we create a new spread. Let's just do a double page spread. Cool. And let's take a piece of text. And let's take, what's a good image to work with? Let's go for this one. I like this one. Okay. So, once again, we're going for big image. We love a big image. In fact, I say we love a big image. Let's make it bigger. Cool. We got a text, body. Let's give it light text. Let's zoom in. Look at how this is spread out. Oh dear. Let's create a new paragraph style, and let's call this one bullet list. Based upon body, but we're going to do a little bit of a change on things. First and foremost, we don't want it fully justified. We're going to justify it left. Perfect. Can preview that there. And let's just zoom in so we can see what we're doing. Just make sure that we've got the chat open, seeing Tim nailed it with a lot of tracking between your letters there. So let's create a bullet list. So we have our paragraph style, and in our bullet list we've got an option here for bullets and numbering. So we can give this a list type bullets, and you see that that's created our bullet points over here. And we can adjust how our lists work with our tab position, which is how far from the bullet point does it end up starting your text. We can also add some indent to the side of the bullet point, so maybe we don't want it immediately at the edge of the frame, so I'm going to add a 1 mil distance there. And I'm also going to take off the space afterwards, because bullets in my mind, they're not paragraphs. They are combined together almost like a paragraph. So you wouldn't actually have the same spacing after an item in your bullet list as you would in your paragraph style. So I'll take off the space afterwards. And let's go back to our bullets and numbering. We've got some specific options here. So you could choose different characters. You could add your own character if you wanted to. So maybe you actually want your bullet list to be, I don't know, let's go for this star option. So maybe you want this. And these are all from your font family. But you can apply a character style to that. So maybe you create a specific color for your bullet point, in which case you could have a different character style there. So I'm going to leave it as our stars for now. But the one thing that always trips people up when you're doing bullet lists is what happens when your bullet list or your line item goes over 2 lines. So I'm just going to shrink this down, and I'm just going to add in some extra text to break the line. So now you see we've got an issue. Our bullet starts here at the left, but our text on the second line also comes in. So if we go into our bullet list and go to our bullets and numbering, what's going on here? We've got our tabbed position, but it's not applying it on the left. So what you may need to do is go into your indents and spacing, add a left indent of how far you'd like it to go, but then in your bullets and numbering, bring back your left indent. Sorry, I did the wrong the wrong box here. So we add our left indent, and we go to our bullets and numbering, and we bring our first line indent back. So the first line carries the bullet point. The total left indent brings all of the text. So in this case, I've just matched them up, our 6 and our -6. and then our tab position as well. So now we have perfectly aligned text here for our bullet points and our bulleted list. Hit OK, and now we've got yet another paragraph style with our bullet list. So that is a quick run through into paragraph styles. They are super useful. The larger your document gets, the more useful you're going to find it, because you'll create consistency across your whole editorial design through your headings, your body, your subtitles. Everything combined becomes so much easier when you use paragraph styles. So I hope this has been somewhat informative for you to jump through on how you can use some typography and paragraph styles in your InDesign. And we look forward to seeing you on another stream super soon. We've got another one coming up in about 15 minutes time, which will be part 3 of the Urban Nights collection. We've already had 2 fantastic streams, and that will conclude our week of live streams for Adobe Live in the UK. And yeah, stick around on Behance for part 3 of Urban Nights. I've been Joe, and you've been great. So we'll see you in another live stream super soon. Catch you later, everyone. Bye-bye.